Hi, this is David. In the last video I showed you how to throw a custom exception and then catch that and handle the error gracefully in a web service created using the Spring Boot framework. I'm going to do something similar here but with built-in Java exceptions. So let's go ahead and look at some of the code we did last time. Here in the controller, this is our controller method that handled errors. Now I'm going to do something pretty similar here where I'm just going to pass in, create a new method down here where that last one was adding numbers. And this one I actually want to call it divide numbers. So let's go ahead and do that. Divide numbers. Here we're going to create something, a return value, called divide numbers output. The method will be called divide numbers post, and in the body we'll pass in divide numbers input, which we'll name divide numbers input, and let's grab out of there the first and the second right there. All that stuff. Now we're getting these squiggly lines because we haven't created these divide numbers input and output. We also haven't, we don't have return values yet. So let's actually do a return value here. And we're not going to check the parameters. Instead, we're going to say something like create a service to divide the numbers and then output a response entity that has those values in it. So something like this here. Down here, with no error handling at all, and down here. And since we're not dealing with sums, we're dealing with divisions, we'll say instead of sum, we'll say, let's see, integer, not sum, but quotient. So F2, rename that to quotient instead of sum, and then the service, which we haven't yet written, we're going to call that one divide numbers, pass in the first and second numbers, and they'll say the quotient is that, and let's see, make sure we do divide numbers output here, name that variable divide numbers output, create that as a new divide numbers output, etc. here. Okay, we've got a lot of squiggly lines here, and let's go ahead and create these models, the inputs and the outputs. And they're going to look a lot like the add number input and output. So I'll just steal this right here. And I'll create a new model called divide numbers input.java, which is a class, and it'll look very much like this. First number, second number, that's all good right there, okay. And then I also want a divide numbers output, which again looks a heck of a lot like this right here. It has a couple of constructors, so I'll steal that right here. New file, divide numbers output.java. It's a class. And instead of a sum, we're going to have a quotient. So we'll use my rename hotkey F2, change that to quotient. And instead of get sum, I'll say get quotient, like that. Instead of set sum, I'll call that one set quotient. Message will be the same. The constructors, I have to name them divide numbers output and divide numbers output there. Oh, the parameter names are different here, so it's not sum, it's going to be quotient. It would work with the word sum there, but it's not very descriptive. Rename that to quotient right here. Okay, so I think that took care of most of the squiggly lines in my controller, except for, let's do this, control dot to import some things, and control dot to import that, and really the only thing missing is this service right here. So my math service, I want to add divide numbers to that, which takes in two numbers. First number, second number, which will be the numerator and the denominator of the divisor. So let's go into our math service right here, and we have an interface first of all, so I want to do this. I want to say integer divide numbers. So it's going to return an integer, and it'll take first number, comma, integer, second number. Right here, number, right there. That's my divide numbers, and now I want to implement that. I have an implementation. In fact, I actually have two implementations because one of the earlier videos I created a mock for this. So let me start off by, in my actual implementation, the one that I'm going to use, I want to say public integer divide numbers, and this will be integer quotient equals, we'll default it to 0, and then we'll say quotient equals first number divided by second number, and then return quotient. How about that? We could have done that all in one line, but might make things later on a little bit easier if we split this out. All right, so just for a refresher, in Java, if you have an integer divided by an integer, it will return an integer. And because dividing sometimes actually returns fractions, and fractions can't be integers, what will happen is it'll just truncate. So if I said, for example, 100 divided by 2 would be 50, that makes sense. But 100 divided by 49 would be like 1.9 or something like that. And it would return a 1. So that's... it'll just truncate that. It'll get rid of the remainder. Have I got that right? 49. Maybe. Anyway, that's what we're doing here. But the point is, it won't have any fractional element, and it doesn't do rounding. It just truncates to the lower number. All right. I better do something similar right here, where I say again, public that signature, and I'll just say return. 10 is fine, just something if I wanted to write a test for that and mock it out, I can do that. And of course I have to override these. I forgot to do that over here. So that, and I think this will all work now. I think I've got everything wired up. So if I say mvn compile, does that... give me any errors? That looks good. So let's actually run it. I'll come down here to my application and just say run. Like that. Now we've got no error handling in here at all, so I just want to make sure that it works. Okay, so I'll go over to this, and I wanted a post to oh, I've got a mistake here. C numbers is... it should have been divide numbers like that. So let's go ahead and stop that here, and everything else should be right. I'll just do a quick glance down here, make sure the word sum doesn't appear anywhere in this. Once I get down to divide numbers, application JSON there, nothing there. And then for all these things, like for the output, there's the add numbers output, that's fine. Divide numbers output, make sure I don't have the word sum in there anywhere. And it looks like I do. I've got a problem here as well. Get quotient, oh, let me do a rename. F2, get quotient, and that should be quotient. You guys are supposed to be keeping me honest here. You've let me down. Let's close that. Let's close that. Math service impl, that looks good there. Okay. Math service mock, that looks good there. And that looks good there. And that looks good there. And that looks good there. Okay, let's go back to our application and run it again. And as it's running, I'll just look down here to my divide numbers method in my controller, and I should be able to do /divide numbers. That's the path right here. So it'll be HTTP localhost. It's out here somewhere, output, but 8080. And the name of the app itself is very top, GCast, so /GCast, and then /divide numbers. That's what I want. Post to HTTP local GCast /divide numbers, and I don't want it in the query string here. What I want is an input in the body that looks like this add numbers input. So a first name number, second number, and a person name. Be kind of like, let's see, this right here. So I probably can just steal that. Let's grab that. First number, second number, and I guess I don't need the person's name here, but let's do it anyway. What was it? Person name, David. So what we want to do is we'll say, how about 10 divided by 2? Oops. Click send. Send that, and it's running, and it has to be in the headers. I have to tell it that it's application, or I'm sorry. It'll be the same as this right here. In the headers, I want content type. Application JSON. Let's send that and see if we get back. Got a breakpoint in here, which I didn't want to have. But let's go ahead and step through this step. So the quotient of 10 divided by 2 is going to be 5. That totally makes sense. And now we get some output that has quotient is 5 and the quotient is 5 David. I've got that name in there. Let me get rid of that breakpoint here just to show you that if I did, instead of something simple like 10 divided by 2, let's say I did 100 divided by 3, that's actually 33.3, but because I've specified an integer, I only get, it truncates the 33.3. So it truncates the 3, it just takes it down to the next lowest number. All right, and that's great, except what happens if I try to do 0 for that second number? Well, in that case, I'm going to throw an exception. And what comes back? Well, this isn't very helpful at all. It's not the same format as the JSON that I got before, and it's a status of 500. Doesn't give me any information at all. Now, I could do what I did last time and just check the parameters ahead of time and make sure that's not a 0, but it's possible that I don't really know that. Maybe there's some complex logic inside of here. It does more than just add numbers, or divide numbers, and the division might be just a part of a longer workflow, and maybe I didn't even write that workflow. Maybe it's buried in there, I don't even realize it. So I want to catch for errors that I don't really know about, or that aren't my custom errors. So I can do that. And what will happen is, let me set a breakpoint in here just to see that error getting thrown, is that when I run this thing here, and I'm on that breakpoint, and I try to step over it, you can see that it actually threw an exception right there. So that's what's going on here. So what I'm going to do is I am going to wrap up this service method. Right, let's see, here, this method right here. So this is the line right here that might throw an exception. And I'm going to wrap that in a try catch. like this. Put that inside of the try. And in the catch, let me catch for, there's something called an arithmetic exception. All right? And let me see if I have to, I don't think I have to import that. That's just already there. And then I'll handle that exception here. Actually, no, I take that back. What I want to do is I want to not have that here. Undo all this. I want instead to have that in my controller. And in my controller, what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap this up in a try catch. So right here is where it's doing something, and I will say try catch right there. Indent that a bit. And this, when I call it, that's where I want to catch the exception. And one thing that could happen is an arithmetic exception. Right? Okay. There. And then once I have that, then I want to do something pretty similar here. I want to say something similar to this, where I do inside of here, the string message is just going to be an error has occurred. And I'll say plus person name just to make it nice and here. And then add quote, about exclamation point, and then colon plus e dot the message, get message. Let's get that error message right there so the user can see what that error was. In fact, I'll say an arithmetic error has occurred. Now you can put whatever you want in here, but now what I've got is this divide numbers. What I'll do is I'll move this right here, divide numbers output. I'll move that outside of the try catch right here. Here, and then I'll set it, I don't have to declare it here or here. So it's available to both. And instead of having quotient, because it was no good, I'll just return a null with that message. How about that? In fact, I probably should do something really similar just for the generic case. So if I do, now I know that a divide by 0 will return an arithmetic exception, but there may be other exceptions as well. So I want to handle those also. And how you handle it is up to your business logic. But let's add this here. So if it's a divide by 0 error, I'll probably get this. Maybe I could have some specific in there to saying I think it's a divide by 0, but it could be some other exception. And let's try that. So let's do this. We're going to run this application again. Run, start debugging. And there it goes. And now when I run this, the quotient is 0, and it did not work. And why not? Now let's go into here. We'll set a breakpoint right there. Run it again. Hit my breakpoint, and then I'll step and go into that service right here. It starts out with 0, and now when it tries to do this, now I get a catch right here, and I should get the message is here. And oh, I see my mistake here. So what happens is I set this right here, but then I set it again down here. So what I really need to do is this right here should be in my try catch. So I'm only going to do this. And in fact, I probably don't need the divisor output. I could probably put this down here and get rid of it. No, that's fine, actually, right there. That's fine. All right. So here, divide numbers will be the quote. I'll use the quotient right here, but if it fails, then I want to use the quotient is going to be null, and that the quotient's going to be null, and I'll just return whatever it is. So there's my problem. So let me go back to my application, and I'll run it one more time. And now what I should see, if I've done everything right, now I've hit this breakpoint, quotient starts out being 0, step, right here, I threw an exception, and the exception is, if I hover over this E right here, then I should be able to see, well, let's just step over that, and now my message would be, arithmetic has occurred, David. And it's divide by 0, slash by 0 is the message that I get from here. So to get that, and that's what's going to be returned into this, an output with a null as the quotient and a message with a divide by 0. So right here, an arithmetic has occurred, divide by 0, and quotient is null. So just like in the last video, I was able to return something more meaningful to the user, more consistent. So this format is the same as what I had done if I had had something that didn't have, let's get rid of those breakpoints, an error. So now the format is the same. The client doesn't have to change their code radically in order to call this. So 49 divided by 2 is 2 because it's 2.1 or 2.05 or something like that. And this is a lot more elegant. Plus they get something pretty meaningful in the error message. In the next video, I'm going to show you an even more elegant solution for handling exceptions in a single place in a Spring Boot application. But for now, this is David. Thank you for watching.